Hey everyone, this is Socratic Hobbits, a podcast where Kyle Morse and me, Daniel Hayward, try to ask big questions and then answer them. Sometimes we stay on topic. Thanks for listening. What are you gonna do? Technology, man. Yeah, we are using at work this. I don't know if it's a particularly large company for estimating like the software, but the UI is from the early 2000s,
It's better
and
than the 90s.
it is better than the 90s. They it glitches often enough that we just have
Oh,
to close out and reopen. I probably do that at least once every single day. And when I was building a tool, um, it it was I probably did it every hour because I was either asking too much of it or
is it
anyway.
like a Visual Basic thing?
No, no, I wasn't coding, quote
No, I
unquote.
mean, is it written in Visual Basic?
I have no idea.
Like, does it look like you know how in Excel you've got like your forms and stuff that you can fill out?
Hmm.
Does it look like
Oh yeah,
those
it
forms?
does. It does look like that.
Yep.
There you go. We found the issue. I just got to let them know and say, "Hey, coding something from this decade." Well, hey, yeah, how you doing? What's new? It's been
I'm,
what? It's been a month since we talked.
yeah, I'm doing fantastic. I'm looking forward to getting to hang out in person
I
next
know.
weekend.
That'll be great. Yeah. Our
And, yeah,
number one fan and number two fan are getting married.
I
I'm
don't
pre-
know
I
that
don't.
our number two fan is marrying our number one fan.
I'm just
Maybe she
suggesting.
she will become our number two
I,
fan. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, well, I just assumed that was what they connected over was over listening to our podcast. They met each other through listening to this podcast on our forum. I don't
That's right. People should get on that forum if they're looking for love. Uh,
know. Someone emailed me. So I was using some stuff from the Tiny Habits book on our website. And
mhm.
then I emailed them and they were like, hey, we want to take a look at we want to make sure that you're not infringing on any of our intellectual property. And I was like, oh, that's seems really reasonable. I didn't know how to give them access to just one, and so we weren't getting very much traffic on our blog at all,
Yeah.
and so I just password protected all of it because I couldn't do just one. And then when I was in setting up today's podcast, I got in there and somebody emailed me and was like, I want to read your blog. What's the password? It's like from 3 weeks ago. I was like, oh, oops.
Wait, what on earth would someone think that a podcast was infringing?
Yeah, apparently you haven't looked at our blog, Kyle. I used a tool so there's from Tiny Habits there's a tool specifically it's like behavior design.
Okay.
Like how do you go through and it's essentially a Google sheet or Excel sheet that walks you through behavior design. So to give you the broadest strokes, and this is taken whole cloth essentially from Tiny Habits. Oops. This is taken whole cloth from Tiny Habits. You list out, you know, 20 behaviors basically. They're to between 10 and 20 behaviors. And then on the next sheet, you rank those, or not rank, but say like out of 10, how effective do you think that they'll be? And then on the next sheet, it essentially like it pulls from that first sheet, both the second and the third sheet.
Hmm.
And then you say, how easy will it be for me to get myself to do these things?
Okay.
And then on the third sheet, it adds those two together and sorts them. And so you see, all right, here's the easiest and the most the easiest and the most effective are at the top.
Got it.
And that's basically what it does.
So there's like a copyright thing?
That's just that tool is exactly from Tiny Habits.
Uh huh.
And so
So
I just emailed him, and because of something I said, that was my conversation with BJ Fogg. He was like, "Just let me take a look." Within 2 hours, he was like, "You're not stealing anything from me." So
oh, okay. Oh, so this was actually with him or with someone who represented him.
it was with BJ Fogg.
Cool.
Yeah, I told you I talked with him.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was about intellectual property.
It was that and a couple other things.
So
Yeah,
the way you get an author's attention is like pre- come close to plagiarizing, and then they go, "Hey, I want to check out what you're doing."
yeah, that's it. You've got it. That or they send their lawyer and they send you a cease and desist letter. No. He was really nice. He was one of the very, very pleasant person to talk with. Um, so anyway, so I had, basically because I didn't, I don't know, want to be infringing on anything. Um, I just password protected it and sent him the password. It was something silly like Socratic,
Hmm.
or password 123, one of those ones. Um,
Nice.
and then after about an hour, and then I just apparently didn't unlock it. So I apologize to any of you listeners who wanted to come check out our blog, and it said access denied.
Well, apparently, I wouldn't have even been able to look at our blog if I had the time while I was off hiking mountains and jet skiing this last week
Oh
down in
boy.
Bend. But
Well, you could have logged in through our.
I also didn't have very good access to the internet. But
Well, got a lot of excuses, Kyle. You were jet skiing on mountains? Sorry.
yep,
Oh,
jet skiing across mountains. It's
there
a
you
lot of
go.
fun.
Which mountains were you at?
We summited the South Sister Charity. It's actually kind of cool. So the three sisters next to Mount Bachelor
Mm-hmm.
in Central Oregon were originally called by the first European settlers there, uh, faith, hope, and charity. The greatest of these being charity. So charity is the tallest one. We were kind of laughing because faith is the most technical, and hope is just kind of there.
What do you mean? Is it like it's a little
It,
peak?
it's not as tall as either of the other ones, and it's not as technical as either of the other ones. So I don't know.
Hmm.
It was kind of funny,
Yeah.
but
So you and your wife and your kids summited.
no, just me. Um, it's a 6 mile hike up, and I actually don't remember what elevation you start at, but you end over 10,000 feet. So it's similar to going up to like Paradise at Mount Rainier,
Hmm.
except the top is, at least at this time of year, because there's no snow. The top is super. The footing's pretty treacherous once you get up there because it's all uh, kind of ashy sand and little volcanic rocks.
Well, especially this year. I don't think it's always like that in the very beginning of July.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was snow; it just wasn't all covering everything. So you could do a little bit of glissading in a few spots.
Mm. Yeah. Where were you on Monday?
On Monday, what was I
Monday
doing?
was the hottest day it's ever been in Vancouver.
We
So,
were still
for
we were
reference.
still at home on Monday.
Oh, okay.
We headed out Tuesday night. But yeah,
So, did you
my
vacation with your family at all, or did you just like go hike and do other things?
that is vacationing.
Well, but with your family.
No, that
What?
was like it was with my brothers and sisters in law that I summited.
Oh, I see. Okay. And then you came back to a house or something. You guys were all staying at.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's actually my sister in law's husband's family's house that we stayed at, so that worked out pretty well.
Cool.
And I had a also as telling my wife she asked me what my favorite parts from the vacation were, and I said, well, one was jet skiing with you, and then the other one was I had a fun conversation with my father-in-law where I was asking him what he's the elder in the church we were at when we were in Portland. I just asked him, so what would you say your principles for a church body would be? And he quipped, well, this isn't original to me, but at one point I read along the way someone said, deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. And And then, and then he kind of delved into that a little bit more and said I mean, at the surface, it's sort of like, well, how is that applicable? Like, that sounds like sort of a throwaway answer. But if you start to meditate on what it means, what it meant for Jesus to deny himself, what it meant for him to take up his cross, what the cross actually is, what it means to follow him, it rapidly starts to bring to mind um, ways in which we can have really concrete steps that come out of those three commands from Jesus. And so this morning, actually, for my 10, so we had talked last time about doing
10 ideas every
10
day.
ideas every day, and I took a break from that on vacation, but this morning I got back into it with 10 ways I can deny myself. So that was
Mm.
uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a couple of uncomfortable, I called them tens.
Mm-hmm.
Some that were fun, some that were easy, and then some that were, uh, uncomfortable. So, uh, what, I don't know, was there any, like, as far as a church body, what, like, what was something practical or something that kind of came out of that conversation with you too? Or, like, as far as related to those three commands?
I think it was really more. I was thinking it more as being applicable to me, um, as a member of a church, as opposed to we should try and get everyone in a church to do X, Y, or Z. It's more. There's value in meditating on the words of Christ as a body, um, individually, because that's where you're going to. If I tell you should be doing this, Daniel, you're far less, as we've talked about before. If someone external tells us to do something, it's far less likely to gain traction in our lives than if we internally develop the reason and the motivation for going out and doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So um, the practice of of meditating on scripture. I guess one thing that came out, not only that conversation but another conversation, is along the lines of denying ourselves, is the practice of fasting and um, being ready, willing, and able to give up the comforts and freedoms that we have become so accustomed to as Christians living in this period in American history where the church has had a lot of influence on politics and just kind of the social fabric of the country.
Mm.
And one of the things he brought up talking to the Chinese missionaries is just how the smartphones used by the state there to just keep tabs on what everyone's up to and
Mm-hmm.
inform the social credit score of
So that's
everyone
something that
there.
they've moved forward with, social
Yeah,
credit score. Okay.
yeah.
Hmm.
And so, like, if they start noticing that, oh, so and so is looking at the Bible on their phone and so is at this specific location every Sunday, it's pretty easy to keep tabs on that person and make it really hard for them to be in community and make it really hard on everyone who they're connected with.
Yeah. What if, like, could they leave their phone home or no?
Yes. Oh, totally.
And they
Yes. But
probably, there's probably lots of people who do.
but his point was that in America, how many American Christians leave their phone at home during Sunday? Can take a break from their phone long enough to go to church.
Well, that's a good point. Um, yeah. I mean, at this point, people don't have a reason to take breaks from their phones.
Mm-hmm.
Not if they, at least not externally, not like the Chinese people, Chinese Christians specifically, because there's no, I guess there's no extra persecution for going to church specifically. There is, if you're more open about it in certain situations, then there's maybe some. I wouldn't even, persecution is probably the wrong word because there's real persecution going on in the world.
Yeah, I like the idea of having a different word for being made to feel on the
Uncomfortable.
outside. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Than
Yeah.
being fearful for your
Life.
livelihood and life. Like,
Yep.
I know we were.
Well, I think there are some people who do fear for their livelihood related to being. I don't even know that it's being Christian though. It's. I guess it's just not. It's not just being Christian that would
Well,
cause issues.
yeah. I mean, I, I can't remember if I've shared this on this podcast, but a good friend of mine
Do you have another
recent.
podcast, Kyle?
No, I just mean I don't know that I've shared this here, but I've a good friend of mine actually lost his job at a tech company for recently for
Hmm.
not being willing to use a random pronoun for for one of his coworkers.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I have. You told me about that a little bit back, and I'm not. I don't know. I'm just rethinking how probably gonna have some kind of situation like that. Not at the company I'm at, but at some point in the future, maybe somebody I'm interacting with on the owner side,
Mm-hmm.
or in very,
Right.
like I could have a situation where it's like it would be helpful to have thought about how exactly I'm going to respond to this,
Right.
and maybe the answer is exactly the same as your one of your your friend, but maybe it's not, and I just need to. I don't know. That's just something I need to think about, I guess.
Yeah, and that's something in our current cultural context as the US moves from exporting Christian values to exporting transgender science. It's something that's going to be more and more important for us to be ready to give an answer to.
I I mean, on one level, I agree. We did used to transport Christian values, kind of like they were patently Christian or signaling Christianity, but there was also a lot of negatives that went along with that, a lot of prejudice, a lot of yeah, just assumptions that I think were incorrect. Specifically, like, and maybe I don't know. I'd be interested to hear your idea of this, but the idea that there's a neutral. My wife and I were talking about: is there a neutral viewpoint on certain things? Is there a, in America, basically that meant a perspective from like Western Europe was the neutral perspective on things and the way that we view the assumptions that we have that we bring to the table. Why are you laughing, Kyle?
Oh, because we started to talk about this a while back, and I think the if you want to call something a neutral viewpoint, the one touchstone for neutrality, if you want to call it that, is the Noahic covenant. And
Go on. Noahic covenant.
so the covenant God made with Noah after the flood, where he promised not to destroy the world, but to preserve it from any flood in the future. And then he gives three commands as part of this covenant with Noah. Three commands to Noah and those who follow him to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. To that, if any, that all the animals are given to him for food. That um, if anyone sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. Um, so you have the underpinnings for um, family and commerce, and also for justice, that aren't tied in any way to aren't tied in any direct way to really. I'll just say aren't tied in any way to a salvific covenant, the covenant of grace, but rather are a common covenant that is applicable to um, all people, whether they're Christians in the covenant of grace or non-Christians outside of the covenant of grace. It's
Mm.
true for all humanity, um, based off of the the sense in which we still bear the image of God even after the fall.
Yeah. Well, hmm. That's yeah. I'd have to look at the text, but that's an interesting point for neutrality. It does go pretty far back, and it is pretty basic,
Right, right.
but
It's
um,
fairly limited.
mm-hmm. It has
It's
to
two
be.
things. It's limited in its scope, and it's also limited in its time
What do you
because
mean?
it's limited to this earth.
Oh, sure. Okay. Um, but as far as neutrality and where I had kind of been going with that was that, as far as exporting values, I don't know that, like, I don't know. I get this impression from people who are conservative that they view people who are liberal as like a monolith, right? They
And
all
vice
agree.
versa.
And yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really easy to say this other group of people is, um, they all think the same. And that's just like related to transgender stuff. That is not a decided topic, in my opinion. I see things from different people, especially female athletes, um, especially related to uh, like just bathrooms in particular. I just don't think it's a decided topic as far as what what is good. And you know, I my hope is that we can figure out a way to, you know, love people well and not have yeah, not have
At,
a
yeah.
basically be this this us versus them kind of no matter who it is. That's
I
I
mean,
mean, well, yeah, sorry, go on.
I was just going to ask, was your discussion with your wife around whether there can be a non-Christian solution to the questions that are being asked right now about transgenderism?
No, we weren't talking specifically about transgenderism. And we weren't talking about whether there would be a non-Christian solution. But a lot of our discussions are specifically like, how do we as Christians love people who are very different from us?
Mm-hmm.
And how does that affect our politics and how we think about who we want to vote for or not vote for?
Mm-hmm.
And what does equality mean? And those are thorny, difficult problems to deal with.
Well, actually, the sermon we heard at the Bend OPC um, yesterday morning, I think had a lot to say about, because it was a unique sermon in that he was preaching out of John, and he recognized it was the section where the Pharisees come up. I believe it was the section where the Pharisees come up to Jesus and go, and Jesus is going back and forth with them on whether or not they're actually free. Um, and so he was pointing out to us as Americans that we've had this. This wasn't the main point, but he was pointing out to us that we've enjoyed these freedoms as Americans, but we've allowed these freedoms to become an idol, and we think that we're free because we're Americans, rather than realizing that any freedom we any real freedom only comes through God's grace, through the gift of Christ.
Hmm.
And I guess I see some of the answers to those questions that you're asking about, and it's not. I'm not saying that it's not. It's not. It is necessary to wrestle through these questions on a very uh, gritty, practical level. But I think, to a certain degree, if we take a step back, a lot of the answers fall out a little bit more simply than maybe they would if we or at least if I like am really in the middle of everything. It can be really hard for me to see the forest for the trees. But if I take a step back, I can look at, okay, who do I vote for politically, and recognize that who I vote for is not going to save me. It's not
Hmm.
going to save America. Who I vote for is not a vote of identity. It is a And so that takes out a lot of the burden, I think, of a vote. And then when it comes to equality, recognizing that that whole concept of equality makes no sense outside of a Christian worldview. I mean, if we look historically at like what cultures were like before Christ, the that was no one.
No
I
one
don't
thought that.
think anyone thought about that. It was just sort of whoever's stronger takes what he wants, and the weaker get used up.
Hmm.
And then Christ comes along and says he who would be the the leader should be servant of all.
What do you think about? I was thinking about Roman society, which
Mm-hmm.
predates Christ,
Right.
and the emperor was the first among equals. That was a strong idea, but maybe that was just for
When did that idea?
the very beginning. It was part of the Roman Republic, and when it changed during the Roman Empire, which started around 27 BC, 47 BC, something like that.
Oh, how because he couldn't say that because it was a republic,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting thinking about how the people the senators I don't
Yeah,
think
the
thought
senatorial class.
thought of themselves as equal with the plebeians.
Yeah, so there was the plebeians and then the non-citizens.
Yeah.
Um, so it could have been that they were equal among, the senatorial class was all
Yeah.
equal,
He
and then
was he was he was trying to make the case that he wasn't setting himself up as king because that was a big
are you talking about Julius Caesar?
yeah,
Okay, because I was just talking about
or Augustus.
emperors in general.
Right, but there's a reason that that statement would have been made at that time because it was a big shift, obviously, to go from a republic to an empire,
Mm-hmm.
and for one person in the Senate to stand up and say, I am my rules carry more weight than yours. My ideas carry more weight than yours do is a good way to get stabbed on the Senate floor.
Yeah, but the Roman Republic it wasn't led by the Senate only. There was also what was it called? Was it an
The
emperor?
consuls, they had
Yeah,
consuls.
no, 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 no. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I think you might be right actually. And the consuls had fairly short
Right. They were
stints.
chosen out of the body of the Senate
Mm-hmm,
or
mm-hmm. You're right.
to lead, and generally there were two of them to
Mm-hmm.
try and balance things out.
Well, and yeah, and there was usually a senior and a junior consul, and they could only serve one or two times in a row. I don't recall.
Right. It was very meant to avoid a consolidation of power.
Yeah, which was terrible for running of the empire when it got to be a certain size, and so there became a certain point. This is kind of a tangent, and then we'll stop, or at least I'll stop. Um, is that it, the unix would stay in the same positions while the consoles would change, and that way when the consoles, like when power would shift, there wasn't this big like everybody has to learn how to do everything again. And it's
Mm-hmm.
been, I think they would switch every 2 years or 4 years. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but I just think that's interesting. That it was like, the console would essentially have to ask like, I don't know how to do this thing, how do we how do we do this, and then the
Right.
unix who are nominally not in any power at all are like, okay boss, let me walk you through. I know sometimes that was how it felt at one job that I was at, where it was like we had a new boss and she didn't know. Um, she was new to the company, and so she just kind of had to trust that the basically everybody who worked for her knew what they were doing because she couldn't really correct.
Uh-huh.
But it was a big enough company that there was lots of standard operating procedures, and it worked out fine. But it was just like okay, you want me to do this thing, but that doesn't work because of X, Y, and Z. And she was just like, oh, okay.
I trust you, and
I trust you,
how
and
does this work?
how does this work? Exactly, exactly. It was a couple months before it was like she had to learn a lot very quickly, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So I think that was like, I think we jumped from one tangent to another
Well, we were
tangent.
talking about equality, and
Mm,
I guess so. So a question I would have is because it almost seems to me like there's a difference between the equality that the Caesars were espousing between themselves and the Senate as an equality of the right to rule, basically,
mm,
and equality
in
as it
America.
gets discussed here in America. Now, it does, I think, it does have an important um, there's an important parallel there in that both are talking about power, especially some of the discussions about equality now are very much about who has the right to speak to power, who has not had power, so they should be given power now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were talking about, formerly having Christian values, and we've talked about the Innocence Project, and one of the
Mm-hmm.
things is like there are, our prison population is enormous. Like,
And it's not representative of
and
the whole
it's
population.
there's a lot more people of color inside the prisons than in our, than is represented in our population. And even right now, like the uh there's Tokyo Olympics happening fairly soon,
Yeah,
happening in like a month or something, I don't know.
right.
And there are they have thrown out a few competitors because of various things. Like they find a way that they're breaking a rule, and they're saying, "Hey, you can't compete." One of the most ridiculous ones, there's a that they're all kind of ridiculous that my wife was sharing with me, but one was, if you're swimming, you cannot wear a swim cap that can fit essentially an afro in it. Like, that is a rule. Figure
Hmm.
it out. So either cut your dreads off or whatever. I don't know. You just can't have, you can have only a normal sized.
That doesn't seem like it would help you to have a big bulbous swimming cap.
There's one particular competitor who she has I think she has dreads. And no, probably it is not helping her, but she is still able to, like, she was still able to
Swim a competitive time.
swim a competitive time. So anyway, there's a few, but they've specifically, like, it's only affected black competitors. Like, that's who they have said. Not not
Is
that
this
the
a U.S. rule or a?
It's an Olympics. It's, I mean, like, the Olympics organization.
Okay,
And this is, you know what, I won't say any more because I haven't looked into it myself. I haven't looked at
verified that
exactly.
there is a rule.
Yeah, I mean, it's my wife, so I trust her, but I don't want to, she read it, and then now I'm saying it, and it's easy. I mean, if you've ever played the game telephone, you
Right.
know that things can change a little bit every time you say them. So I'll see if I can find something, and if I can't, I'll probably just cut this. So,
That actually brings up an interesting question to me anyway. And and I guess like it's definitely wrong to exclude people based off of things that are more applicable to particular groups of people and not as applicable to other groups of people, and that is racism. But I was just thinking on on the other hand, there are so like on the scale of Innocence Project to swim caps,
uh huh.
the Innocence Project seems like a much bigger deal, and yet it seems like on social media the swim caps get elevated above the Innocence Project.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's like, hmm, hmm. Part of it is representation, I think,
Okay.
where if as a, you know, you and I are white males, we see ourselves represented in media and in competitions like the Olympics. There's plenty of white guys. Part of that is because,
Especially in the 100-meter dash.
well, no, no,
Why
okay.
don't they maintain equality there, Daniel?
Oh my god, you're the worst. Uh, This is why I'm on a podcast with you, so that people can know your deep, bad. I don't know, man. Uh, Gosh, you just derailed me, man.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. But you do like there. Okay, in all honesty,
Uh-huh.
like there are certain things that you want to see someone like you represented in, whether that's, if we're gonna say a movie that's not the Olympics, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you never ever had seen somebody who looked like you in as like a good guy in a
Mm-hmm.
movie, or you
Right.
always saw someone who looked like you as a sidekick or the bad guy or the like whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's good. Like, because the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that our society tells us about us really affect how we think and then the choices that we make. If, and my wife and I were talking about police officers, and one of the things that's drilled into them constantly throughout all of their training is everyone that you talk with could have a gun and could pull it on you
Mm-hmm.
all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen all the time. Maybe it's something that they should be prepared for. But don't you think having that constantly drilled into your mind that everyone you talk with may have a gun will negatively impact your conversations with a society that is not 100% armed, and the people who are, I would say the majority of people who are armed, at least in, I don't know, are have them legally. I mean, I have no idea. That's just
Oh,
that's
for
the
sure.
that's the thought I have. I don't know if that's true or not. But like that story probably has something to do with the problem that we have with policing right now, that we've had for a long time.
And it is I mean, it's a thorny issue because it's a question of how how many police officers are we willing to sacrifice to make it so that they have a more gentle approach to their interactions with people.
How many citizens are we willing to sacrifice to make sure that
For sure.
I mean,
It's a two-way
half?
street.
Yeah, like should we try to get it more in the middle? The thing is that if you know that you're not going to be as safe as a police officer, you're a lot less likely to do that job,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
See
And
Portland.
yeah, sure. And I mean, do you know what happened with New York recently?
No.
They hire so Andrew Cuomo
Mm-hmm.
he's no longer the mayor.
Right.
They voted for somebody who basically is like, we're gonna give more money to the police, we're gonna do retraining, but
Mm-hmm.
but we're gonna be hard on crime. That's
Mm-hmm.
basically one
Yeah.
of his big things,
Okay. Yeah.
because crime there is insane,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody wants to live in a place where there are, well, very few people.
Criminals want to live in.
I don't
Maybe not
even
even
think
criminals.
maybe not even criminals, because you don't want everybody doing that.
Yeah.
Like, you want to be able to, I mean, it just becomes the Wild West, right?
Yeah.
Probably a poor analogy, but it just becomes the laws are
Might is right.
the laws are if you murder somebody, then you'll pay with your own blood. If you know, be fruitful and multiply, the most has the, you know, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's those three, right, rules that apply to everybody
Mm-hmm.
from the Noahic covenant in a society with no other like those are the base rules.
Right.
Um,
Those are the base rules that people can flourish under, can move forward under.
I don't think that you can live in a group of people where those rules do not make themselves evident over time.
Right. You can't move forward if you don't have those rules.
No, I mean, I don't think that you can live. I don't think it's possible to live in a group where. What are the three parts of the Noahic covenant again?
Be fruitful and multiply. You can eat animals, and
Oh,
if
well,
if, if a man sheds another man's blood,
He'll pay with his.
he'll pay with his. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least okay. So those first two, I guess I don't, know 100% about. Uh,
I think
Although,
those are the three. There may have been a different one too.
yeah, I will just like in no matter.
In essence, think family, commerce, justice.
But as far as like, I think that as far as a base for justice,
Mm-hmm.
like with people, whether there are written out laws or not, if you kill somebody, you're gonna pay with your blood. Like that's a
If it can be proved.
yeah, sure. That's in a more litigious society, right? But in a society with no laws, you don't have to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
Not really. And that's how you get like blood feuds and different things, problems. Anyway,
What was your point about New York
oh, just that,
in
you
relation to
know,
Portland?
what's that?
In relation to Portland.
Just that you have, you might expect New York to be a place where they would want to abolish the police based on its, political leanings, and they did not. They wanted to. They voted for the person that basically ran on the platform of we're going to reform the police in a really positive way.
Right.
I think that if Portland or Seattle or some of the places in California decided to abolish police, it would last as long as or less long or less than the like CHOP did.
Yeah. I mean, we're already starting to see a reversal in Portland on the rampant homelessness,
Oh,
in
really?
how they're handling that. It was actually kind of interesting because I guess the Portland Rescue Mission came to the church we used we used to attend, and because there's a homeless camp right next to the church, and they went over some of their tools that they use to kind of interact with people who are experiencing homelessness,
Mm-hmm.
and then asked the church how they could help, and people said, well, we are not sure how to interact with this people in this camp, and so the Portland Rescue Mission has people who are trained to go talk to people and try and understand where they're at, get them resources, and help move them forward.
Yeah.
And the long and short of it was those those people from the Portland Rescue Mission went back to that camp and just went up and down the whole camp talking to every individual in it, and they told the people at the church, the best thing you can do for the people here is report this camp to this number in Portland that's responsible for cleaning up camps, because the people in this camp are not interested in getting help, and they're in a very dangerous situation for both themselves and everyone in the surrounding neighborhood. And so it'd be better if they were moved to a safer if the camp was moved to a safer location, and there were basically it'd be better if the camp was moved to a different location.
Yeah. I wonder where that location might be. Just because, when I worked downtown,
Mm-hmm.
the that it was so bad in that area. It was like we would call or somebody would call and
Right.
they would come through with a dumpster and just throw stuff in it, and then like homeless people would set up where they had just cleaned.
Yeah.
Like, well, not quite. I mean, it was like the next day or next couple days,
Hmm.
and these were under bridges, and so they were particularly attractive to homeless people because they weren't being rained on.
I know in some places they started putting like kind of boulder scapes underneath the bridges
Yeah, yeah.
to make those areas less attractive for that.
Well, yeah. Then there was an abandoned lot near, which I noticed in the last 6 months. They've put about 50 tiny homes in
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
homeless people, and now it's just
Right.
like there's just a
Places with basic sanitation.
yeah. It would work okay if there were. not, they've put 50 there and now there's 150 or 200 people who live there in that
Right.
abandoned lot. And, you know, yeah, not very sanitary because it's not meant for that many people.
Right.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. And, saying, I think some places have said it's just illegal for you to be homeless, and so you get arrested if you're sleeping on the sidewalk. And it's like, well, that isn't.
Which isn't helpful because you do have people who legitimately have just lost their housing, and that's what the rescue mission people were pointing out is like, we want to find out, did this person just like lose a job, have a medical emergency, get
Mm,
kicked out of their housing, and can we provide them with employment? Can we provide them with medical care? Can we get them into a temporary housing situation so that they can just get back on their feet?
yeah,
Or are these people who have just given up on the
the
this?
way that we've agreed as a society to live.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't know how else you say it.
Given up on living like humans,
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know.
and have gone the route of Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, that feels far. I'm not sure that I disagree, but I'm not sure that I agree.
But I mean, it's an uncomfortable thing to say, but when you interact with a few people, that does seem to be the direction that they have put themselves on. Sadly,
Yeah, yeah,
and I mean, it takes having a conversation with someone, multiple conversations with someone, to understand that, to understand where they're at and what they need. Because there are
yeah,
definitely people who will be just, I need a roof over my head and a little bit of structure in my life, and if I can just get that, and I can move forward. And those are the people that you go, great, like, we have these resources. This is a place. Let me drive you there.
yeah.
um, get you a meal, get you started in a program,
Sure.
and but I haven't had the opportunity to work or talk to that many people in that
Yeah.
situation. Sadly, it's really exciting when you do.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know if yeah, I hope that there'll be some kind of solution for the homelessness problem that's really the West Coast. I don't, and maybe it's in the East Coast as well, but I just know of it particularly problematic in Seattle, in Portland, and then a couple different cities in California.
This may be begging the question a little bit, but how much of this do you think is um how much of all these things, I mean, homelessness, the need for something like the Equality Project, is a loss of an understanding that humans are humans because we're made in the image of God, not a product of evolution from apes?
Mm, can you rephrase your question, please?
Do do we see people denigrating other people and people denigrating themselves because we do not have an understanding of who we are as humans?
I mean, I think that's a big part of it. Um, and I think another part is that we have, like, we don't, it's like we want the benefits of Christianity and not the, not the rest of it, as far as equality goes, right? You were talking about how,
We want the
see,
privileges and not the responsibilities.
sure. Yeah. Um, and that just falls apart. Like, I don't, when you say that everybody is descended, I mean, when one encouragement that I have with, related to justice, right? Related
Mm-hmm.
to the Innocence Project, related to mass incarceration, related to how poorly um, groups of people are treated, is I know that if people are not served justice now in
Mm-hmm.
this life, that they will be, um, and that no wrong goes unpunished, right? That God is a just
Right.
God, um, and and at the same time, that's scary, right? Because
it reminds us of our need for grace.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when I get really upset at a particular individual because of something particularly heinous, and I remind myself, but for the grace of God, there go I,
Hmm.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, all right, I need to get off this horse a little bit
Yeah.
anyway.
Do you, I mean, I guess one of my questions from earlier was, are we picking things that are easy to repent of to avoid thinking about things that are bigger and
What have I picked that's been easy?
oh, I'm not talking about like the two of us. I
Oh,
mean,
okay. All
maybe
right.
it is the two of us. I'm talking about culturally.
I don't think
Um,
anything that we've been talking about that's cultural is easy to deal with. I mean, at least the conversations that I've been having have not been easy, have not been comfortable. Racism, at least the way that I'm talking about it, is essentially a prejudice that is difficult to see in yourself.
mhm. And I guess
As a Christian, I get to trust that like God will point out the things to me that that the Holy Spirit in me will continually point out things that are not honoring to God and that I can continually improve, right?
do you think it's a bad way to go to say that, or unhelpful to say that culturally we're repenting of not allowing someone to wear an afro swimming cap instead of pointing out how we've sent millions of black women to Planned Parenthood?
So that's one of the it's easier to talk about one than the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Right?
And I mean, both, you could say both are uncomfortable, but one is easier to wrap our mind around, I guess.
Mhm.
And the other is just so heinous and horrendous that we couldn't I can't possibly justify myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to think about things that I can't justify myself.
When you say yeah, I can't justify myself.
I can't like do something that makes me feel like I made it right.
Mm, yeah, you can't. There's nothing, Kyle, that you can do to make it better that a million babies were killed.
Right.
Yeah.
I can post on social media that, oh, they should let this person uh
Mm,
like, I vote that this person should be allowed to swim. I'm on the side that says that the swimming cap should not be an issue.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I get a point for me. No, but I'm serious. Like,
No, I know you're serious. It's still funny. That's what probably makes it funny. Kyle, you make my life. You make now I have to slow down and I have to think, and at least I can edit out all this silence.
but I mean, that's where I was bringing up bathing caps or swimming caps versus the Innocence Project. Is we have all these people who are incarcerated
Mm-hmm.
wrongly, or incarcerated. Maybe they're incarcerated correctly, but they've been disproportionately incarcerated. Like, white people have gotten off for things that black people have not gotten off for,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's led to this disproportionate representation in our prison population. And we should be, as Christians, advocating against that, praying for restoration for people who have been wronged in this way. And I think, as you've done a good job of getting agitated about that, more so than swimming caps. But
Well, I just found out about the swimming camps. You wait. I'm gonna get agitated.
but this seems to be a common theme among us in our current cultural setting, which it's fascinating, because these whole the whole idea of being of wanting equality comes from Christian perspective.
I mean,
um
would you say Judeo Christian specifically or Judeo Christian?
Judeo-Christian, I mean.
Okay, just clarifying.
Oh, this is a funny anecdote. My father-in-law is reading this book called Dominion, which I really want to read. But in that book, they talk about how Hinduism was actually the creation of the British East India Company. Had
Sorry,
you
what?
heard that?
No, I have not. Did you? Sorry, say it again. I think I misheard.
Hinduism was a PR product of the British East India Company,
Mm, okay.
because India was essentially like Africa with all these kind of spirit ancestor worship
Uh huh.
religions. And then the East India Company wanted investment in colonizing India.
Uh huh.
And if it was just like this crazy random witch doctor religion, or all these crazy random witch doctor religions, people with slaves and people, uh, wives being burned with their husbands when they died, people would go in Britain at the time of William Wilberforce were going to go, why are we putting money into you guys like investing in this culture? And so they basically went and created a palatable religion for,
Is that why they're like they're huh, that's fascinating. I
and so they were like, do you have a book? Oh, well, not really. I mean, it's mostly, but like someone wrote it down something over here, and they went, great, you have a book. And do you have like,
so sorry, were there Hindus and it was just very small?
no, there was no such thing as Hinduism. It was all these like, it
Huh.
was like Africa with all these different, the book is called Dominion by Tom Holland.
Huh.
Um if you want to
Hmm.
read it. But
Yeah, sure.
yeah, they
Maybe.
just went through and went, and basically, so they created this like, uh amalgamation of all these kind of witch doctor religions, and then put it in a package that sort of made it look like they had a Bible, and they had like
Is it did they
rules
kind of
for
model some
life.
of the larger philosophies of Hinduism after Socrates was I thought one of them. It's like it's a Roman thing. I can't think of it right now.
Stoicism
Yeah, Stoicism.
or
Yeah, Stoicism was what I was thinking of.
Epicureanism. I don't know. No,
Just like
Buddhism is
denying
more
your
stoic.
what's that?
Buddhism is more stoic.
Oh, and Hinduism isn't.
But Buddhism, I think, legitimately did come from like,
There was a Buddha.
there was a Buddha and he
Yeah, I've seen him.
wrote some stuff. Yeah,
I mean, images of him. That should be clear.
yeah. But
Huh.
yeah,
Okay.
it's just,
That is very interesting. Then I have never heard that.
I hadn't either. But now I really want to look into it more.
Well, we have Google for that.
Yeah.
Um,
The only reason I brought that up is just how influenced our thought is by Christian parameters,
hmm.
and 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 so a lot of these, like, should a transgender person be allowed to compete in their gender of choice at the Olympics, um like, is that, are we, and the question being based off of, are we loving them if we don't allow them to do that? That
Yeah.
question, like the question about, should someone do something, should someone be allowed to do something due to our love for them, doesn't make any sense outside of a Christian framework or a Christian.
You're saying that people who aren't Christian can't
No,
love
no, no, no.
somebody and say no.
What I'm saying is that we, in our current American context, are so heavily influenced by what the Bible has, how the Bible has shaped society and culture, that non-Christian ideas at their core are the result of hundreds of years of Christian influence
Hmm.
being kind of spun out one
Yeah.
degree off every year.
Sure. Well, and I think an encouragement to so we celebrated the Fourth yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and an encouragement I have from basically finding problems with the way that the U.S. is related to justice specifically, and then
Mm-hmm.
all these tangents that come from it, is that I have high expectations for the things that I care about. And I'm very thankful to live in America, and because I want it to be the best that it can and to be a good thing for the most people, like that is why I criticize, right?
Yep.
And,
But we shouldn't just criticize. We should point out what the solution is.
yeah, so in the same way that when you criticize your friends, when you say, "Hey, you can be better and I want to support you in however I can in order to help you be better."
Scripture says, deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not a criticism. It's not a cold criticism. It's a I'm here with you.
Yeah, it's not an I'm judging this person. It's a here's the boat we're both in, and this
Mm,
is the path out.
yeah, absolutely. Well, are we going to start our podcast yet?
That what what else were we going to discuss?
I don't know. We didn't talk about what we were going to discuss. We just started talking.
Yeah, I mean we hit on kind of what we've been up to and what we've been thinking about. I think we've I was just thinking actually on as I was driving on our trip that we've been doing this for over a year.
We have. Hey man, thanks for chatting. I'm glad we can make this work. We should probably do this a little more often.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it's Daniel again. Just wanted to say thanks for listening. Feel free to reach out to us at socratichobbits@gmail.com if you have any feedback. Alternatively, you could send Kyle a singing telegram. Thanks again. No cats were harmed in the making of Socratic Hobbits.